I'm delighted to be here today with Lisa Harvey and Terry Weiner, and we are here to talk about a whole bunch of topics that really, from a layman's standpoint, start with return to office, but it's really so much more than that. Return to office came to ahead again the other day with a Dell article announcing that all employees who do not return to the office will not be considered for promotion, which is wild. And it's wild that we haven't figured this out yet. And quite frankly, Dell's not the only one that hasn't figured this out, right? I mean, everybody in the financial services sector is trying to mandate return to work, but it's really not about return to work, right? So here with me today are Lisa and Terry, and they're going to talk about the current landscape and how we can shift the narrative away from this idea of this top-down place-based return to office solution to a more holistic approach that engages teams and people leaders. And so Terry and Lisa both have traversed careers, across technology, workplace, and people and culture. They have a combined 40 years experience helping organizations navigate the intersection and optimization of people, process, and place. And we're really going to tackle this subject today. Bring some light to it, offer some solutions, and this is going to be a two-part overview. So I'm going to start with you, Lisa. Would you tell us why, please, we're tackling this problem, now, and why it's so incredibly important?
Thanks, Andrea. We see big brands coming out and doing with a narrative that's doing a disservice to their brand and their culture. And you're getting a media frenzy that comes as a result of this. And Dell is just the latest in a long list of companies that have come out with such a clinical and non-human response. The second reason that Terry and I are really interested in this landscape at the moment is that with the customers we work with in the research that we're doing is that we see the humans are falling into two camps. You get people that are consciously grieving what was a workplace and employee experience pre-COVID that they're now missing. But we're also seeing people unconsciously grieving. They are feeling a particular way and they don't understand why. And place, and more importantly, gathering, played a part in someone's, in people's both personal and professional well-being. And what we want to do is educate people to the value that and the power of place and gathering does for both our personal and professional lives. And so finally, the thing for me is if we don't get this right now, we are at risk of reverting back to a model of 2019, which didn't serve employers from a cost perspective and employees from a work and personal life alignment. We were at risk of burnout then. We're at risk of burnout now. And it's the change management that really needs to be tackled for us to be effective and transition or transform to a new era of work.
Yeah, it's interesting, Lisa, because when we first met, one of the first things that happened was we were at a hybrid advisory council. And in my mind, for the last 25 years, I've been thinking of work as place, and I've been thinking about people, but I've been thinking about people with regards to productivity, people with regards to output in the business. And you gave us all a sheet of paper that had like 50 faces on them. And at that moment, I sat back and I thought, to your point, and you used the word human several times, I've lost track of the human factor. How would you describe the current landscape and the current state of work? I mean, I think it's less bleak than what I've described, but where are we right now?
What we feel is the mainstream, whilst there are some outliers, I'll give a shout out to Atlassian and to Allstate and to Airbnb, but the mainstream organizations globally are watering weeds. And what we mean by that is that you have organizations that are mandating their people to return to office for a number of days, which is not necessarily conducive to the type of employee experience they want to have. And then those employees, those resentful employees, are showing up to the office and doing what we coin a badge and bolt. And so you're also forcing leaders to become attendance compliance enforcers instead of enablement of productivity and performance, and enabling people to be their best self. And then when you have people doing the badge and bold, and then clearly the return to office mandate is not working, those organizations, instead of reviewing that policy and seeing whether it's actually effective, are doubling down and putting CCTV to ensure that people transition into their desk. The second one is this recent announcement from Dell. Now, I will put a caveat on this. I'm not an employee of Dell, and so I don't understand the full detail of the policy. So I'm just going on face value of what that headline is, where anyone who is a remote worker, they're not allowing them to be mobile from a career progression, whether it's around the company or through promotion. And so you're denying a section of your population the ability to be their best self and reach their full potential in your organization. And where that becomes a lose-lose is that the company suffers because they're not reaping the benefits of a high potential who's going to deliver performance, innovation, and business growth to that business. You're also then, with your high performers, it's not just about high potentials. It's not just about performance. It's also about the mindsets, behaviors, and practices that person embodies that actually sends a ripple across your organization. So if you disengage your high performers, that's going to impact your broader employee base. So it's a lose-lose. So what we're seeing is organizations watering weeds, and what we need them to be doing is focusing on the real problem, which we will get to today, and what are solutions, the practical solutions that help organizations navigate to this new era of work.
I wanted to jump in because, Lisa, you brought up something about the risk of returning to 2019 pre-pandemic, and I actually think what I'm sort of feeling or sensing from what we're seeing in the articles is a return to even pre-2019. Like, it feels like a return to the past, as I think some other leaders in this future of work discussion have said. It just feels like we're going backwards even beyond 2019 with some of these very strict, very prescriptive place-based policies that frankly, I think it just shows like how much control a lot of people at the top need to have over seeing their employees just to feel like productivity is happening, right? Regardless of what other data suggests.
I just think we're at such an incredible tipping point now. We've been talking about supporting remote, hybrid, and distributed workforces for the 25 years that I've been in this category. And there have always been reasons why it couldn't be done, whether it was technology. We have 5G now, or whatever our telephones are now. We can connect, or whether it's government rules and regulations, or whether it's or social norms. Now is the time to progress that. Now's the time to build off of what we've created over these last 4 years. And so where should we really be focusing? What's really going to make the impact? How do we not regress?
Yeah, that's great, Andrea. I think, with COVID, it exposed an opportunity for employees to make choices, more choices, I would say, in balancing a lot of personal needs with work, right? A lot of us, including me, like, we were forced to work from home every day, but with that meant also balancing all of our personal needs. So I think that it became less about, I go to work from 9 to 5, I do work, and then I come home and then I do the things I need to do in my personal lives. It was all intermixed. And I think employees got a flavor of that. And coming out of the pandemic, I think that there's sort of this need that employees have in wanting to feel empowered and trusted to work from where it works, and to have the flexibility to choose some of that. And so for some people, that might mean going into an office or a space with other people a couple times a week. For some people, it might be mainly remote, but going in for special gatherings or events, because that's how they want to spend their time going in, or they live so far that it becomes a hurdle to go in. So I think it's really, and I think we've heard this so often, is one size doesn't fit all. And so why are we trying to get all employees to fit into just one specific model? So when it comes to place, I think it's important to think of space or place as an enabler or a tool, right? It enables teams to gather. It enables teams to come together to collaborate and connect with each other. It's not the only solution to this problem, right? But just showing up to a space is not the answer. It's frustrating, I think, for people to commute, to waste time coming into an office when they know that they can do some of the work from home and be just as productive, if not more. I think you've seen some of the memes like of people going into the office and then sitting by themselves, either at their desk or in a conference room, sitting by themselves on a Zoom call, right? Like we all must agree that that's not a good use of time to do that. You're not gaining the benefits that you're talking about coming together and gathering in person. So we don't want that. I don't think we want to waste people's time or have people show up and not gather and connect with other people. The report that Lisa mentioned earlier, I think she mentioned a workplace flexibility trends report that was published last week. And in that, it said about 75% of companies have not established team norms or meeting norms. They've not trained their managers in managing a distributed team or adopt best practices for how they work across distance. Right. So you force a lot of these employees into situations where they're on globally distributed teams where they have to manage hybrid schedules, but no training is provided, no team norms are established, right? So I think what we really want to be focusing on is we want teams to agree on when and why coming together makes sense for them because they are the closest to the work, right? Not the top-down mandates or policies. And we want to give managers and teams the right data and the right tools to reach these agreements faster because we also realize that this is probably a muscle that has not been built in the workforce. And so we have to give people the right data and tools. Just saying go and create team norms is not enough. We actually have to give them the right tools and solutions to do that with.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And this whole what I love is that you're starting with the teams who are actually doing the work as opposed to these mandates from an ivory tower. And they're in the positions, we've entrusted them, we should inspire them to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
If we're getting back to gatherings, then how does gatherings translate then and get the attention of the C-suite? Because even if you're building those norms on a local level, right, you have to have buy-in and guidance. Right? It's a multiple level process. So how do we get the C-suite involved?
Yeah, I really loved when we were doing a pre-briefing with you, Andrea, for this session, and you rightly said, tell me why a C-suite is going to respond to the word gathering. And since COVID came about, the workplace has never been more valuable in its history because every day an employee has a choice as to where they spend their time. And so therefore the value of workplace, we need to get a greater understanding of what it means to show up and how much investment in both our time and an organization's money we want to be putting into place. And so we've built a hypothesis that also is a benefits map. And so when we look at gathering, we want to be able to talk to both the individual, the team, and the C-suite with this dual model. What you have is organizations that are coming out with this narrative that says you will return to the workplace because we will be more productive together. And what has been disproven is that we are neither more productive at home or in the workplace. And so what we need to start looking at is the people metrics that actually look at the holistic story of what value will be delivered, whether we're in the workplace or whatever place we choose to work from. And one of the things that Terry and I, when we look at our ambition, is to look at both what we call the me and the we. So what we want to do is ensure that the individuals have values-driven flexibility. So Andrea, what's important to you, your personal life, your family, carers' responsibilities, hobbies, well-being, that determine where you want to spend your time, but equally you're part of a team. And that team has a purpose, and therefore we need to combine that with the purpose-driven gathering for that unique team that delivers the people and the business results. And so what you're looking at here is, as I said, this benefits map that actually shows you the value of gathering. And so instead of saying you will come together because there's a productivity benefit, we're saying as an individual, as a team, and as an organization, we have personalized gathering needs that will be in service of either building social capital, increasing tacit knowledge, or enhancing team effectiveness. They're the only reasons why we'll gather. And then when we hit that, we know we will hit a productivity measure, but we're also going to hit a loyalty, engagement, and advocacy. And we'll also hit, importantly, where we talk about that sense of belonging and well-being. Because one of the things that people are missing is that connection to people, that social connection that builds social capital that actually helps their job get done faster, the tacit knowledge that gets their job done, get done faster. And they feel like they belong to part of something that is much bigger than themselves. That sense of belonging is critical.
The main thing I want to add is I love this benefits map because of the things that we highlight in the middle. I think it's when we do a lot of this work, I think the things that are presented on the right as like the business outcomes, productivity, engagement, sense of belonging, well-being, I feel like we've heard a lot of those words. We all would say that, yes, we support all of those things. But like, how do we do it? And so the reason why I really like this map is that the things in the middle, I feel like are really great, tangible things that people, workplace leaders, employee experience leaders can really rally behind and say, hey, like if I bring people together and help people establish norms to gather with more purpose, it can lead to creating better social capital, increasing tacit knowledge, enhancing the overall team effectiveness and cohesion on a team, right? That feels like something that you can actually do. And especially as workplace and employee experience leaders, like those are the things that you can even like measure and show that the impact of gathering can lead to this. So then you can go to the C-suite and say, here's how we think these things are impacting these larger business goals. So I think that's like the benefit of this map, is showing what we can actually do and not just throwing out some kind of big business outcomes words that we know we don't always have a direct impact on.
For example, one of the customers that we worked with, 66% of their leadership had a weak social capital inside that organization. If your leaders have weak social capital, you are slowing down the pace of your business, you're slowing down decision making, you're increasing risk, and you're slowing down collaboration. That all impacts productivity, but it also impacts engagement and sense of belonging and well-being.
These 3 points are actionable, they're measurable, they're concrete. It's not just theory, right? And that's cool. And I think that way that enables buy-in from every stakeholder. This has evaded us though, right? Getting this right and understanding this right with regards to gathering. And we've all lived it. I have gone into the office and sat in, and sat alone. And my intent was to gather, right? So as humans, we know it, we've experienced it, we've theorized about it. But so what kind of information do you need to learn from teams to effectively gather? How do we solve for this?
How do we solve for this? Well, I think, you see that on the left, the art of gathering model there's components at the individual level, the team level, and org level. Okay, so for us, it's really about understanding it at each level. So I would say from the individuals, what we want to know in terms of at least data is we want to learn about work and their personal attributes that might be impacting how they coordinate their time. We want to know about the strength of their social network, right? So if you're new to an organization versus have been there a long time, the strength of your social network might be different. We want to know about the type of work that they do. Is it like repetitive, routine task, or is it highly complex and interactive where you require a lot of interaction with your colleagues? So it's not just about knowing your preference. Do you like to go in or do you not like to go in? We really want to explore the different dimensions and attributes because, again, all of these I think are evidence towards like what a solution or a team agreement should be. So that's just the stuff that we want to learn from individuals. From the teams, it's now taking into consideration that all of these individuals are now on a team. So the team dynamics can shift and change based on the makeup of the team and who's on it. So for the team, once we get all that data from individuals, is we want to know, what gathering means to them. Like, why come together? Like, are we the kind of team that's going to come together just for special moments and occasions to celebrate, to recognize, to reward people? Or do we have such complex initiatives where we really want to force people to come together to help kick off projects? We're all on the same page right from the start, and then maybe we do fewer meetings after that in person. But the idea is to align on the principles, because every team is different, on how they want to spend their time together and help them make more informed decisions. At the end of the day, it's that balance of the me and the we, but creating those norms so that individuals can make more informed decisions when they're deciding, whether to come together virtually or in person. So I think to enable this, what we want to do is, once we get that data, is to help teams organize around how they'll work asynchronously and synchronously. We talk a lot about gatherings, but I think it's just as important for teams to align on when not to gather. So that's where aligning around the norms for async is so important. And then not only that, but when they gather, we want them to really understand the which types of activities are best suited for in-person gatherings versus virtual or hybrid, because I think there's a place for both. So when we say gathering, I just want to really re-emphasize that we don't just mean in person. It's a combination of both in person and virtual or hybrid.
Well, and I think that's really important that you underscored it, that gathering happens in place and it happens virtually, and when the appropriate time is for that on a practical level. I'm glad that you differentiated that or brought light to that. So who should decide on the gathering norms and why?
Oops. I stopped sharing.
It's a really interesting one, because at the moment, what we see is, once again, a majority of organizations are coming out with a very controlling narrative. You will come back into the office, you will come back in X number of days. And the organization is then, what you're depicting is, I'm controlling gathering. It's a one size fits all. You come and exist in space. But what you're doing is you're dehumanizing the employee experience, because I haven't taken into account the individual and the team. So we know that gathering needs to be personalized at 3 layers: the organization layer, the team layer, and the individual layer. The organization needs to establish gathering rituals that symbolize the employee experience that they want for their people, and to project out to attract the right talent into their organization. Secondly, they need to establish communication rituals that are contextual to what is going on in that organization. For example, if they were destabilized as a business, as an industry, they were going through a merger acquisition, you need a high degree of communication and bringing your people together to ensure they're informed, they feel confident, and that they can talk to what is going on in that business, not only amongst themselves, but also at the family barbecue when they're being asked by what's happening in that organization. And so when that unique moment in time of the business dissipates or it completes, the communication ritual goes away. So it's very contextual. Now, we believe where gathering really hits the road, or there's the accelerant, is at the team level, because that's where the work gets done. And gathering needs to be determined based on the nature of the team and the work that it does, the cycle that team is, the context of that team, and right down to then every individual. And what's important here is that every individual puts on their team player hat and they bring compassion into a gathering cadence, because even though they may have been in an organization for 10 years, they may have a strong social capital, they've got their high business acumen, high tacit knowledge, they know how the black market works. They may have a newly forming team that they need to be able to be nurturing their journey, because that means then the whole team becomes high performing. And so gathering cadence is in service of the whole team, and it has to be purpose driven and meaningful to that team. So there's personalized. And then finally, Terry mentioned this, we start with the individual in our solution, because we believe at the moment individuals need to be have a deeper understanding of what are the attributes of both their work and their personal life that will determine and guide them on where they should be spending their time and what their work environment, their mindsets and practices need to look like. And so that forms their own personalized gathering cadence. And so for me, I work remotely for a US-based company, so I need to up my social gathering through the course of a week to compensate for that. I need to get myself out of spending 40 to 50 hours sitting at this screen, and I need to change into different environments so I don't get attentional fatigue, which impacts my cognitive ability. And so these are things we need to be building an understanding of with individuals, which is both about not only connection in both their personal and their work life, but also performance in both their work and their personal life. And so each individual have their own gathering need, but we believe that's where some change management work needs to be done as well.
Yeah. And I think this is a good time to, when you said change, and it made me think about, again, that report that I referenced earlier, the Workplace Trends report. And in it, it said only 25% of employees feel their employer has adequately supported them in changing how they work. Right? Like we're going back to asking a lot of employees. We've had this huge, change in how and when and where people work, but yet only 25% feel like they're actually being adequately supported by their employers.
And so what's the biggest challenge for managers, and how do we help to unblock them? How do we change the course of this stat? What do we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first is around capability. I think we already highlighted from the previous stat that a lot of employees don't feel adequately supported. Another survey by Gallup said 70% of managers had reported that they have no formal training in how to lead hybrid teams. So to me, yeah, that's quite a stat to think. I'll bring like a sports analogy into this. Like you wouldn't send players on the field if you hadn't trained them, given them the skills. And I mean, imagine what football would look like if people went out there without a playbook, without being coached, without practicing, before they showed up. It would be complete chaos. So yeah, so I think capability is one thing. It's really disappointing to hear that we're now in 2024. We've been, we were forced to work remotely in 2020. We've had a lot of opportunity to take a lot of learnings and help people adapt and adopt new processes and ways of working, and that just hasn't been done. And 70% is quite a staggering number. So the other thing that I wanted to highlight was capacity. I think capability is one, like the skills, but others capacity. I think that managers' plates are already so full, so full of a lot of just, I think about the administrative burden that managers have, what falls on managers to manage the team towards objectives, manage the team's performance, be the rallying coach for making sure that the team understands the culture and the values that the organization's trying to implement across the organization. So there's a lot there. So I think how is it possible to allow managers to have time and space to focus on facilitating some of these conversations that we're talking about, to focus on gaining the skills needed to bring their teams together and talk about the ways of working that they want to adopt and practice going forward? I think it's really hard and really challenging for managers to find the time, the space to do it, and have the right skills to do it.
Well, this is the irony, and let's get back to watering weeds. We will give a leader or a people manager an attendance report and get them to go and sit with each of their people who haven't met the requirements and have an attendance or conversation to say, why aren't you complying? Taking them away from being able to build and nurture and cultivate high performance, enable people to be their best self, but we allow them to spend their time. I spoke to an old colleague of mine last week, and we were on this topic naturally, and she was talking to a salesperson in her organization, responsible bringing in revenue. They were so frustrated because they are no longer out in the field. They come into the office to sit and have compliance conversations with their people. They're highly, highly frustrated. And I'm sure there are a myriad of stories out there that this is where we're investing, asking our investors to, we're asking our leaders to invest their time in this versus cultivating high performance and giving them the capability and the tools to do so.
Right, they're compliance officers now. So I think, managers I'd say they need, a consistent approach across the organization that helps them engage with their team and facilitate the alignment discussions. They need a common language and a framework to build that safety and inclusion in having those conversations. It should be data driven if possible, right? It should be data driven and not just based on the feelings or preferences of one or a few individuals on the team. So I think that's important too, is thinking about how to approach this in an equitable way and in an inclusive way, is by starting with a data or framework that can be consistently applied across the organization.
Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. And forget the time of people commuting, oftentimes 90 minutes each way to the office. There's time to communicate, to educate. There's time. So recently it was very cool. I took the Happy Place assessment. Thank you. And I'm excited for our listeners here and our readers also to learn more about it. So can you share a quick summary about what Happy Place is? And I love that name. It's just brilliant.
Sure. We'll just give a bit of a flavor in this session, noting that we will do another session with you, Andre, where we're going to deep dive into this solution. So Happy Place, as Terry mentioned, it's evidence-based. It is an org change solution for individuals, teams, and the organization, focused on cultivating high-performing distributed teams through ensuring we have values-based flexibility and purpose-driven gathering. We start with a personalized experience for the individual. They get an assessment where we look across 20 dimensions that give them guidance on what their gathering preferences, mindsets, and practice should be on how to elevate both their performance and their social connection in work and life. We then take the individual assessments and we produce a team profile, and then we sit with the leader. We get a deeper understanding of what's going on for that team, and then we show them their team profile and what language they can start using now with both individuals and their team. But then we look at guiding them into 2 separate workshops. One to focus about sharing what's happening with individuals and creating some norms and practices for async and sync work for that team. And then the second workshop looks at building those gathering rituals that are personalized to that team. Now, once again, we said you're putting your team player compassionate hat on. You're also making sure that it's informed by data. So we're improving the psychological safety of this discussion for that team. And then out of that comes a gathering playbook, which has norms and practices and a gathering cadence personalized to that team. We then take those and then they form insights at the organization level that the organization can then implement rituals that are responding to a moment in time for that organization. So this is a very high level flow of what the Happy Place solution is, but we look forward to deep diving into that next time we see you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that also. And so we are going to take a deep dive the next time, but I always want anybody who's listening to one of my interviews or writings to walk away with, some practical tips. So what can anybody who's listened to this do tomorrow, if you will, to impact positive change?
I think my one tip is around meetings, reducing unnecessary meetings. I think we spend a lot of time in meetings or showing up right to a Zoom call or showing up to a conference room, and we just do it. So my call to action for a lot of leaders is to do a meeting audit. Check your meetings if you are the meeting owner. Look at the purpose of the meeting. If you forgot what the purpose is, that's probably a red flag. So check the purpose, make sure you have the right participants. And when thinking about the purpose, I think it should be anchored around discussions, debates, decision making, and even like developing relationships, right? At Dropbox, we called this the 3Ds. And then with that, I would say move anything. This could be something that you practice is move anything that feels like an update or inform. If you're spending a lot of your time in meetings, sharing progress or status updates on projects or tasks, then consider async methods to report those out, such as email, Slack, or Teams.
For me, I'm going to go to the feeling side. I would love as humans, when we wake up in the morning, we do a sense check of how we're actually feeling. We look at the nature of the work that we need to do that day, who we need to do that work with, the styles, the dynamics of those people, and consider where is the best place to do that work. Is that at home? Is it in a cafe, a co-working space, or is it in the office? Because is our energy state going to serve us for the day, or do we need to shift our place of work that will actually shift the energy state alongside it? So I know sometimes if I wake up or I know that I'm getting into a bit of a feeling of I'm feeling flat or fatigued, I think I actually need to go and spend some time around humans in a buzzy environment. Terry's favorite place is to work in an airport, of all places. That's where she does her best work. But just figure out and start to experiment with different work environments and really understand how it impacts your emotional state. Because we have too many people at the moment, as I said, unconsciously grieving, and they don't understand why, and then the action to take to shift it.
Yeah, that's really incredibly interesting. I mean, literally when I'm on the road most of the time, but when I'm working from home, I literally will be in different areas. I have 2 home offices in different areas. And sometimes I don't want to be in the office because I feel too confined and my spirit just wants to be at the dining room table, you know? And so I think that's a really great point, is that you choosing that work environment that stimulates and enhances thought, enhances your mood. And Terry, to your point of meetings, you know, I loved our meeting. Like, we're here in the US, you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, Lisa's in Australia, and somehow getting the 3 of us together, those meetings were so special because of the organization of that. Not only that, but the humans on the call and having this engagement and this dialogue. This was a purposeful virtual meeting. And every time we met, we had an agenda. We walked away, you know, within the time allocated, and it was crazy productive and stimulated. And I look forward to our meetings. And wouldn't that be extraordinary if that's the way we gathered and that wasn't the exception? You know, that would be really neat. So I want to thank you. So just in summary, the focus needs to shift from a return to office mandate to how we build better alignment around why teams need to come together and to strengthen their performance and their sense of belonging. It's not its place, but it's so much more than that. It's the humans within the space. To create shared value between the employee and the team. And how do we meet the flexibilities of the employee and the goals and of the objectives of the team at the same time? And it can be done. It just requires thought. We want to building leader, and the team capability will be the lever that we need to pull, which is decades, and it is decades overdue. We should not return back. We've been talking about this for decades, and now is the time, our pivot point, our tipping point to affect this change. And in our next session, we'll take a deep dive into a solution called Happy Place that we had a little bit of a preview of today, and that I was fortunate enough to engage in. This is an evidence-based organizational change model that operates at the individual, team, and organizational level, and it seeks to create value-driven flexibility and purpose-driven gathering. And I really think this is such an incredible component of the overall solution. So Lisa and Terry, thank you for lending your expertise to the cause today, for sharing your incredible insights, and we'll very much look forward to our next session.